Welcome everybody to another sponsor spotlight. I am super excited to have my friend Jon from Domanicare, the Domani Group, with me today. Jon, you'll give a better introduction than I will, so let us know who you are and what you do.
Sounds good. Yeah, it's always good to meet with you, Ryan, whether it's in person or virtually. And today, grateful that we have technology that can connect us. But yeah, Jon LaFront. I am CEO and co-founder of the Domani Group, and specifically Domanicare is the team that I run today. And we have been in business for, if you can believe it, 4 years on April 1st. Wow. And it's been a wild ride. Obviously, Domanicare, for those that are familiar, kind of our tagline is we're aftercare for the digital age. But basically, it's a text message-based aftercare program where we follow up with your families for up to a year after the service, all via text messaging. And it is live text message responding. So every message is sent by, read by, responded by humans. And it's powered by technology, of course, to be able to do that at scale. But we believe so passionately in people, helping people, especially in this profession. So, you know, it's been a long journey from the beginning of a lot of copy and pasting and scrappily trying to do our campaigns to the robust system that we have now. Part of our program too, we provide grief support through our Domani for Grief platform, and we generate Google reviews. Those have all been great added benefits and certainly bring a ton of ROI to our funeral home partners. We do have over 1,000 rooftops across all 50 states and Canada now. And funeral homes large and small, cemeteries as well. So it has been just a thrill and a pleasure to be able to provide this offering. But the cool thing is I feel like now that the foundation is laid, we're just getting started, and there's a lot more opportunity to help families ahead, and we're really excited about it.
That's fantastic. And you and I, this is the first time we've been back on camera together, I believe, since maybe the summer of 2019 when we were in the original Domani office, which now you take up kind of a campus, which is pretty awesome to see. But so in the last 4 years, Aftercare has evolved and Domani has evolved around and really leading the charge in aftercare. So what are some of the enhancements that you've made over the last 4 years with Domanicare?
Yeah, you know, when you think about the evolution of what we've built, I mean, it started out as just pure conversation, and it was a follow-up about 2 weeks after a service just to check in and see how those people are doing. And it was fascinating. On the very first text message that we send out, of course, it's customized where we include the first name of the informant and the funeral director that their family worked with. But it's always been fascinating to me because we don't ask a question in that first text, and yet we get over a 50% response rate. So that really played into our hypothesis of it's not that people don't want to dialogue with the funeral home, it's just that the way in which we were doing it as a profession wasn't as effective as it could be. And text message has been hugely effective. So we've layered on bit by bit through that process. And we do it very intentionally because we don't want to lose sight of the purity of our program. I think there's lots of things you could certainly do with these families. There's business opportunities, sales opportunities, but I think you have to be so careful with aftercare specifically that you are focusing on the needs of that individual. And above all else, that you're simply showing that you care. I think when I see that and I see the responses come in and I review them on the daily, I mean, I get messages from our responders that just the wow factor of the follow-up is so incredible. But the things that we have done that I think have brought back tremendous value to the funeral home have obviously been the Google reviews, as I mentioned. Grief support is a great thing as well. One of our other enhancements that we did, I believe at NFDA, is kind of when we soft launched it, and then it's grown within our partnerships. But we've done a survey program, and this isn't meant to necessarily replace a lot of the survey programs that are out there in the profession. These are short form surveys. We're talking 5 to 8 questions that are sent via text messaging. The response rate is tremendously high. One thing that we did add per the request of several partners was our very last question asked, would you like some additional information on pre-planning? for example. And we see about 30% of our responses that come in raise their hand and say yes. Again, I think what that has tapped into is, as a profession, I think we've always said, well, naturally, an aftercare person is a very natural conversation to have pre-planning discussions with, but we've always struggled to do that connection because of the sensitivity around the loss. And I think, we have been fine-tuned, tweaking and testing that enhancement to yield the proper results, where we're asking at the right time in the right way. It's non-threatening, and when you do that, the opportunity is incredibly ripe. And so that's been hugely successful as well. But we have a lot of cool things that are in kind of the pipeline too. We had our annual strategy meeting in January with our team, and there are some really, really cool enhancements that are coming in that are going to help the funeral profession, funeral directors connect with even more consumers than ever before, using kind of the foundation that we've built. And really, really excited to very soon share that information. And it's going to be really, really thrilling.
I love it. And I mean, as a company, you've continued to evolve. How has Domani and Aftercare just evolved through the pandemic? What part has that played in the evolution of the technology and the service that you're offering?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, the pandemic has impacted all businesses across the globe, I think. Our team, we were just so fortunate. Many of our team was already remote. And we were able to kind of keep going because we were leveraging communication that wasn't impacted by in-person conversations, right? It was text messaging based. But I think if we've learned anything through that process was, again, the value. The number of times we talk to people, and again, we're talking hundreds of thousands, millions of messages since the pandemic. And just the number of people that feel alone, that don't have a community, that haven't been able to see people in person, maybe that they weren't able to do the service that they wanted to do, or they would have loved to have done because of various restrictions that were there in their local area at that time, via a surge. And I think the long-term impact of that is still left to be said, and how that will impact people. But I have no doubt it's going to impact them greatly. You kind of only get one shot at doing this right. We always talk to families about that, and we have before the pandemic, and we continue to talk about it. And I think that, we have the opportunity to embrace technology, embrace the internet, embrace ways to still provide meaningful service for these families. But the biggest thing, I think, is to just dialogue with them, to learn from them, to listen to them and say, how has this experience impacted you? And our team has the ability to do that every single day. And I think that that's Aftercare in its purest form. And what that ties into is the whole overarching kind of consumer experience that the funeral home has. You need to make that world-class, regardless of what happens. It needs to be a world-class experience. Give them the wow factor. That's going to exponentially impact your business. And the wow factor doesn't need to be tons of bells and whistles. It's amazing how simply reaching out to them in a personal way, even via a text message, can make a world of a difference to these individuals. And you can learn a lot through that process. So our funeral home partners, they have full transcripts of everything. And it's just so awesome. I mean, the ability month after month for them to be able to read that and gain those insights, that's what's going to propel those funeral homes forward and give it, aftercare in a world-class experience during this day and age.
I love it. And I like because aftercare that doesn't really end. That conversation can stay going whenever that consumer needs that conversation. They can always come back to it, which I think is really, really powerful. So, all right, there's been some changes with Domanicare and you personally. Tell me about your new role at Homesteaders real quick.
Yeah. So obviously we announced a few years ago our partnership with Homesteaders Life company and with the Domani Group in general. And through that, we obviously have a pre-need business. We kind of have after appointment setting as a service. And then we have Domanicare that exists. And all of those avenues have grown in a tremendous way, which has been an incredible blessing. I am just such an advocate of focus on the things that we are very best in the world at. And so I have just been so passionate about Steve Schaefer's vision at Homesteaders. I really think it's a different company than it has been, in a great way. And not that it wasn't a good company before, it absolutely was, but it's just, I think Homesteaders sees their responsibility to help the pre-need profession and the funeral profession at large with tools and resources. And I just was thrilled about that. And so it took some creative adjusting, but we've kind of been able to divide and conquer the team a little bit in focused efforts. And whereas before we were kind of all under the Domani Group rooftop, we've been able to divide and, all right, Domani Pre-Need is its separate entity. It's run by Riley Facer, who's the CEO, and that team is focused on pre-need. We have our aftercare efforts, which I'm still the CEO of the Domanicare team, but we have tremendous leaders like Sam Ashby and Hannah and others that are running that. And what that's been able to do is we've divided and conquered is allowed me to be able to grow and develop in my own passionate place and be the first Senior Vice President of Consumer Experience at Homesteaders Life Company. Now, that's a huge shift for Homesteaders. They have historically focused on the consumer, the individual families in the past. It's been much more about the insurance product and how that helps the agents and the funeral homes. And they're not losing sight of that at all. It's just they're expanding their efforts in that regard, saying we need to also help them help the families as well, because the landscape is shifting. I think if we're all really honest with ourselves, it is shifting. There are outside companies coming in, trying to disrupt the space. And consumers are looking at information all over the place, and it's getting awfully confusing. And so it's never been more important to put more emphasis on the consumers in our community. And I think the other thing I would say is we live now in a world, you've seen kind of this mass moving and shifting across the country. There's so many diagrams that show migration in all these different areas. And so kind of gone are those days where families were born and raised and continue to live in the exact same communities that they've always lived in. They're moving. You moved during the pandemic.
Yes.
I moved during the pandemic. I think a lot of people have moved during the pandemic. And now you live in a new area where you may not have a relationship with the funeral home anymore. So how do you reach them? How do you, build a relationship with them? You don't just sit and wait for the death to occur and then you ignite that. Hopefully that conversation is happening much, much sooner. And I know you are passionate about that as well through social media efforts, which is tremendous. So anyways, I'm loving this role. I think that I have the ability to continue to create and innovate. I'm just so consumer focused because I am an aftercare family. That was what got me into this profession, was when I lost my dad when he was 46 years old, and I'm the oldest of 7 kids and had to plan his funeral and dealt with the aftermath of that. And so I always put myself in the shoes of the consumer and say, what can we be doing better? And I think that makes me uniquely gifted in that ability to kind of have this empathy for that consumer and say, how can we make this a great experience? And if we make it a great experience for families and a great experience for funeral homes, then everybody that's involved wins. So it's always about just finding the win-win and elevating both sides as much as we possibly can. So it's been good. I think focus is key.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, I'm going to get 2 rapid fire questions here to wrap up. Okay. 1, what does aftercare look like in the future?
Oh gosh, aftercare in the future. Again, I mentioned our tagline at the beginning. It's aftercare for the digital age. I think there will be more technology solutions that enter the space and will revolutionize that. My hope and my desire and my commitment is that we do not lose the personal touch through that process. I hope and pray that we are not an industry and a business that focuses so heavily on AI and that we never lose touch on the human to human connection. And I think if we do that, we win every time. But I do think a lot of technology and innovation is going to be able to enhance our efforts so that we can provide tailored custom aftercare to that individual. So for example, I was 25 when I lost my dad. That's different than somebody that's 85 that lost their spouse. How can we tailor it to that individual so that it's not just a generic pamphlet and it's the exact resources that that individual needs at that time?
I love it. So this last rapid one goes right into that. The consumer experience. How is technology changing that in death care?
Yeah, I'm seeing us embracing it more. I hope that we actually speed that process up. Again, as long as we don't lose sight of the personalization, I think is crucial. But when I look at the beginning of the pandemic, and certainly 4 years ago when we started things here at Domani, I still had funeral homes that were transcribing via like pen and pencil contact information, and then they were asking if they could send it via fax. You know, and it's like, that has changed pretty significantly as we talk about case management systems that are incredibly powerful and keep you up to speed. Obviously, website enhancements, social media efforts, I think, have increased. To see the sheer adoption. When we started, text messaging, there were so many people that were like, no, we're not doing that. 80-year-olds don't text. That mindset has shifted as we have embraced technology. So I would encourage everyone to stay open through that process. I love the firms that are willing to test and explore and stay open through that process, but are disciplined about having it not deviate from their core. So I don't know. It's been interesting to see and to watch that transition, but I really hope that there's a greater embracing of new and innovative solutions so that we literally are moving the profession forward and we're continuing to stay in front of the consumer in that mindset.
I love it. I love it. Well, Jon, it's always a pleasure to connect with you like this. Where can we find you at ICCFA?
We will have a booth there for sure. I believe we're booth 313. I need to double check with Caden.
We'll find out for sure. We'll put it in the on the bottom of the video here so everybody can see it.
Yeah,
awesome.
We'll be there. Looking forward to connecting with everyone.
Yes, I'm looking forward to seeing you in person. It's been a little while, so thank you so much for coming on, and I'll see you soon.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Ryan. We'll see ya.